My name is Mark Booth. I'm an editor at Hodder's and Gordon Smith, of course, is one of my greatest, if not the greatest author on my list.
That's the correct thing to say.
And well, thank you for delivering such a brilliant script. I think it's absolutely wonderful.
I loved writing this book. It was something that just fascinated me to go through history.
Yes.
And look at some of these great mediums of the past.
Yes.
And be able to bring their work into the modern day and let people see that there were genuine mediums out there working.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we're going to be doing today, well, the main thing is that, having read this brilliant script, there are parts I wanted to know more about and wondered if we could expand on them. And so we're widening the circle here, and then there'll be a subsequent stage where that's included and the circle will be narrowed again. But we were having a talk last night about what this book actually is, and because it originally started, the original idea was a sort of history of spiritualism, wasn't it? And then as we were talking about it last night, we thought, well, no, that isn't really precisely what it is.
No, because a lot of the claims of skeptics talking against mediums is that they give general information, they do cold reading body language and stuff. And I wanted to sort of research and show that there is evidence, actual evidence, to prove that some of these mediums, especially during the Second World War or First World War, they were really at their height, and the work they did was very important. So many people were in a desperate situation, not knowing if their sons and husbands were, still alive. And these mediums were able to give them information about them, whether they had passed or not. But there was a healing comfort that came. And that's something that I really felt was so important. And it wasn't just general chit-chat or nonsense. They were actually coming up with such specifics that you had to believe that something supernatural was happening. This was not the norm. In cases where it was Mrs. Helen Hughes, who literally, she probably gave thousands and thousands of messages during the war to mothers and sisters and wives. And it was the specifics that actually shocked them. But the message that she gave them was that the consciousness of these loved ones hadn't gone. That somewhere there was a life force that was intelligent, that was able to give exact information and detail, of their life, their connection, and so on and so forth.
And I suppose that if you are the recipient of that very precise information from beyond the grave, as it were, that's going to convince you as an individual. But I suppose that people who haven't had that, particularly skeptics, their criticism of mediumship and psychic abilities and spiritualism would be that these supposed supernatural phenomena are not capable of being proved to be true using the standards of science.
And yet there are many different kind of tests done by scientists. The most obvious that comes to me was when Sir William Crookes, the physicist, was asked to investigate the mediumship of Daniel Dunglas Hume. And Crookes went there prepared basically to uncover some kind of skullduggery that Hume would have, gadgets and gimmicks that he would use to create levitations and all this. And actually his findings, which were published as a science paper, showed that he actually believed everything he saw and found no way that the man was actually using trickery.
So he was one of the leading scientists of the day.
He was a leading light of his time, Crookes, in the world of physics, and he would have been no idiot. And this is what I'm trying to show, that there is documentation out there that proves that certain scientific tests were carried out on certain mediums, and these mediums passed the test.
And we'll come to it later. You've also submitted to scientific testing at Glasgow University, which is also going to be in the book. But I suppose when we were thinking about titles, last night a title came up.
Yeah. Beyond Reasonable Doubt.
Beyond Reasonable Doubt.
and that's a great title because this book is about evidence.
Yes.
And I've found, you know, writing, say, maybe about the medium Albert Best, who was a personal friend of mine, much older than me, but the stuff that I've used on Albert's mediumship comes from a Church of Scotland minister, Reverend Kennedy, who was so blown away by the evidence that Albert gave, the proof that his wife, who had died, was still communicating with him.
Yes.
And even to the point that she would come to Albert, talk to Albert, and he would phone the husband and say, "Your wife's here." And Albert was getting fed up with this. He says, "This woman's here again." And she wants to, and the man would say, "Well, if she's really there, can you tell me what I'm wearing?" And he'd say, "Hold on, Mrs., what's your husband wearing?" And, you know, everything would be correct.
Yes.
And Kennedy was so moved because his wife died fairly young and he was really, really grief-stricken. And this man, and a couple of other good mediums, really healed the man. So for him to come from his Church of Scotland background, where he was very staunch against this, he ended up into psychical research and looking into the work of mediums.
Yes.
And Albert passed that test. So I'm using his testimony, not my knowledge of Albert Best.
Yes.
So,
well, and I think testimony, that's a very interesting word in this context, and that's a wonderful story in the book, by the way. But it's testimony. Yes, we're using, we think we've probably decided to use that title because we are saying that apart from scientific criteria, there are other ways in which we decide that we can be justified in believing in something. Yeah. And one of them is the test of a court of law. Yeah. And so I think we both think that many of the cases in this book
would stand up to scrutiny.
Yes.
In fact, one of the reasons that I started this book was I wanted to put some of these mediums on trial, and I happened to sit down one day at a workshop I was taking in London, and there was a woman sat next to me, and she says, "You look a bit concerned. What are you thinking about?" And I said, I need to find a lawyer who can actually help me do, you know, excerpts from this book and different things. And she says, "Well, I do, I'm a barrister." And she says, and then she told me a story that she'd lost her young son and she had no belief in an afterlife, and many people don't until they're challenged. And the loss of her son broke her to the point that she said she would lie fetal under a table in her house. She couldn't come out. And it was a friend of hers took her to a medium, and on meeting this medium, the man said, "You're too broken." He said, "I'm not going to do a reading for you," which I thought was quite credible of him, you know, because he saw the woman was just in no state. But he said, "I'm going to put something on," and he put on a video, she said, and it was me. And it was a video of me giving a reading, and he said, "I want you to try and understand this. Can you see what's happening?" And she said, "Is this real?" And then the medium proceeded to tell her, "You will meet this man, and you will work on a book with him." I had no idea of this. I'd never met the woman. And when I told her I needed a lawyer, and she said, "Well, I've actually been told I'm going to write a part of a book with you." So as we discussed, it would be lovely to get Maria's testimony as an introduction, because she looks at mediums as a lawyer, and she is really, really, you know, skilled in watching people who tell lies or who fudge things. So I think for her to put her introduction to this would also show people that it's not just the ordinary housewife who goes to see these mediums. There's very intelligent people come along and believe it. More than believe it, they actually know it after a while when they've had some absolutely fabulous proof.
Yes. Spiritualism started in the early mid-19th century, but we're talking something a bit wider than that, which is other ways of knowing, ways which are beyond the senses and human reason, and that, of course, has been that predates spiritualism.
Well, I mean, modern spiritualism is the term that really is associated with the Fox sisters in Hydesville in America, 1848, I think. And the two girls would sit and there would be rapping sounds on the table, and they would click their fingers and ask the sounds to repeat. So this was probably the first form of spirit communication like that. No, it wasn't the first time it happened, but it was seen as a spiritualist type thing. And spiritualism was born out of that.
Because there have been, I mean, if you go back to Roman times, I think Pliny, the Roman geographer, describes events in a Roman house which are exactly like the poltergeist at Enfield or whatever. Yeah. So it's those wrappings. That's a universal phenomenon.
It is, and it's not only, you know, it doesn't really begin in Hydesville in 1848. There have been many occasions when people did hear rappings in houses and so on and so forth.
And why did this one become so significant?
Well, I think the Fox Sisters one became significant because there was something happening, and my view of spiritualism, having read as many kind of historical books on it as I can, I've seen it that spiritualism actually was born for a reason, for a bigger reason than people knew. And to me, the sense was this higher power or source or consciousness is aware that there's going to be people dying en masse in the world. Wars that are coming up, that this higher knowledge would have access to future events. That spiritualism itself, because when the Fox Sisters started, I mean, the whole thing exploded over America.
Yes.
Everybody was doing these rappings. Obviously, a lot of them were cheating, and it was becoming performance rather than communication.
But that was a time of war in America, wasn't it? So
it was.
The dead would have been crowding around. There would have been a lot of grief.
And this is it. And because then at that time, I mean, the world was changing at that time. You know, people were starting to investigate the mind in a different way. It's psychiatry being born and things like that. You know, physics was changing as well.
Yeah.
Things like, I mean, I'm fascinated that Sir Oliver Lodge, the physicist who I think invented the components for radio, but Marconi, these people believed in life after death.
Yes, and Alexander Graham Bell was looking...
He was looking to make a machine.
Yeah, that's what
so
Thomas
was Marconi.
So,
Edison. And again, all of these great minds at the time were concentrating on ways that if you can, you know, encourage radio wave to be received and played back through a machine, couldn't you do the same with other etheric energy, which would be spirit?
Yes.
So when you look at the level of thinkers there, as I say, these were the people that actually really created spiritualism as a philosophy, and also even as a science, where they looked into it as a science.
Well, it was the beginning of a movement, wasn't it? To try to look at spirituality in a scientific way. And I think people forget about, because spiritualism now, I think to most people, it would seem like a bit of a Victorian thing.
Darkened rooms and, you know, ectoplasm is the buzzword for the Victorians.
We'll come back to ectoplasm. But at the time it was it was a fantastically progressive thing.
Well, it was.
And it was, it became very closely entwined with socialism.
It did, I can think of a couple of great socialists who were the forerunners for modern spiritualism. Gerard Massey, the great poet, the quotes that man gave us in spiritualism are so philosophical and beautiful. And he was a passionate socialist. And of course Robert Owen, the founder of the cooperative movement, he was another socialist, wasn't he?
Yes,
But these people all lent their name to spiritualism in those days.
Yes. And, Prime Ministers.
Queen Victoria.
Yes.
I mean...
Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah. I mean, the talk is that John Brown was a medium. John Brown was actually a medium.
Was he?
He was a spiritualist.
Yeah.
And there was criticism that he was encouraging the Queen to look into spiritualism. But the word in the spiritualist circles at that time, Brown was actually doing seances for the Queen, it was said.
Really?
There's no recordings of this, and we can't cite that in the book. But... this was rumoured, it was very strong that John Brown was basically her companion and medium after her husband died, and she needed this reassurance that through their love they were still connected through this medium.
And I suppose the Fox Sisters had a bit of a checkered story though, didn't they?
They're not totally credible. But one of the things I've used in the book, because the one thing we can say about the Fox Sisters, whether they were genuine to start with, which I believe it was a genuine phenomenon. It attracted attention, and I think they changed when they got attention, as can happen all of a sudden, you know. But the one message they gave that you have to agree it happened was they were told through the communication of raps that there was the body of the spirit communicating buried beneath the house. And when they excavated the house, they found a body.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there was, if that be true, there was intelligent information that could be proved.
Yes.
That did happen. Whatever they did afterwards, I mean, I think it became a performance. They became like circus acts.
Which is a pressure on anyone, any medium who becomes famous, I suppose.
And then they said that they cheated, then they retracted that statement and said that no, they were told to say that they cheated. So they are very checkered in that way. But I believe also because mediums were coming out of the woodwork everywhere at that point. And it's quite strange that so many mediums all of a sudden came out. You know, they were all over. Europe, the UK, and I said Daniel Douglas-Hume that I mentioned was probably the most known because of the extremely paranormal phenomena that he created, where his body would levitate.
Yes.
And even if you look back to that, to the 1850, 1860, it would have been quite difficult, I suppose, even for a Houdini type person to create some of the phenomena. Because along with this, and this is what makes it different, there would be messages. So it wasn't just phenomena for phenomena's sake.
Yes.
I think the spirit world at that time was showing that there was more to our world than we know.
Yes.
That the law of physics itself is something in our reality, but there's another law in a kind of spiritual sense. But somebody like Hume would give also messages.
Yes.
In the middle of this, again, exact messages to people who had maybe had a loss. And that then said that either that man had a wonderful team of people going around researching, because in order to do this regularly, that's what you would have to have. And as far as I'm aware, Hume did not have, he didn't even have any friends, I don't think, the man, or very few friends. But it would have taken quite a network to gather information on all these people, thinking that he did it thousands of times.
Yes. So, and Hume was never caught cheating, wasn't he? But some mediums who you think were very gifted were caught cheating.
Yes.
So it doesn't necessarily mean if someone's caught cheating that everything they did was a cheat.
And again,
it's the social pressure to perform.
I would say it's the pressure, and once they've become known, then there is that pressure to perform. And the most famous or infamous medium of all time is Mrs. Helen Duncan. And we look at, again, the thousands of people willing to support her as a medium when she was arrested in Portsmouth. And
Can you just give that? Could you just remind me of that story?
Well, Helen was known as a physical medium, the whole ectoplasm and people appearing and so on and so forth. And she gave a remarkable séance in Portsmouth, which to this day nobody can understand how this happened. Apparently the young sailor appears in the ectoplasm and addresses his mother and tells her, I went down today on the Barham, we went down, we sunk. And, you know, the mother knew her son was on the HMS Barham. He gave the exact location of where the ship was sunk and how everything that happened, and everyone was killed. And the lady herself tried to get this information from the Admiralty, and they had no knowledge that the Barham had sunk at that point. So if this medium did do that, or through her mediumship this message came, then...
And there doesn't seem to be any other way.
Well, there doesn't seem to be any other way. I mean, either Helen Duncan had connections to very high up in the Admiralty, who at that time did not know the Barham had sunk anyway. But so that was where we look at the side of Helen Duncan that was genuine. And when, you know, after she was arrested, thousands of people came out to give testimony to say, I'm happy to go to court. In fact, there was so many that the judge had to stop it. But on the occasion where she was raided, now this is another thing, Helen Duncan was raided by the Admiralty, not the police, because word got out that this lady was giving out messages during the war to people, and I think she was seen as a public nuisance.
Well, it was a threat to
security.
Yeah.
So, and also it would, you know, the morale of people was dropping to hear, we've lost the ship. You know, that was something that probably the whole propaganda during the war was to not tell the public all these things. But there was Helen and many other mediums at the same time doing this. But when she was arrested, they said that somebody pulled this muslin or cheesecloth and put it into a bag. But they never found it.
Right.
So what Helen says was she had a burn on her body. She says the ectoplasm was retracted back to her body so quick that apparently she had a burn the size of a saucer in her solar plexus. Now, she was tried and found guilty under the Witchcraft Act of 1735. I actually think they were just trying to get her aside, get rid of this woman, she's giving away secrets. But there was never anything. They never caught anybody as an accomplice of that with Helen that time. But she did, for some reason, get put in Holloway prison. Where it said she held seances most nights for all the inmates. So. But she's a character, Helen, and whether she cheated on times, because she was arrested another time in Edinburgh for the same thing. So whether she was actually cheating and, you know, making a few bob, because I think she charged a guinea or something in those days, which would have been a heck of a lot of money.
Yes.
So that type of mediumship was maybe frowned upon by the other mediums of the day who wanted to be seen as authentic and genuine.
Yes.
So somebody like Helen would have probably got on their nerves doing things like this.
Another kind of adjacent form of temptation, I published a medium about 20 years ago, and I remember bringing her into the publishing house to meet the sales reps.
Yeah.
And she was absolutely brilliant in many ways. She said to one of the reps, "You broke your rear brake light this morning on the left, didn't you?" And he had. And there were lots of brilliantly accurate, but actually quite trivial things.
Yeah, and useless.
And then she also made some, in the book, she made some larger predictions about ecological disasters, which didn't come true.
Yeah.
And the book stopped selling as a result.
Yeah.
But how can, she obviously had a gift.
Yeah.
She could see things which she knew things in other ways, but when it came to the big things, she really got it wrong. Why is that? Why would that happen?
I think, again, there's a temptation there to make a big statement, and also, if you're writing a book and you're wanting publicity and things, you're going to go for the big statement, and a lot of these mediums do predict doom and gloom, disaster. You know, there's so many I've worked with who predict, you know, tsunamis and
you mentioned that Irish. Irish,
oh, so many. Yeah, the lady in America who's now in the spirit world herself, Sylvia Brown, but Sylvia would always give predictions, and it was Mexico's going to disappear under a wave. And when it didn't disappear under a wave, much to the relief of Mexican people, but then, you know, she would move on to the next disaster.
Yes.
And the thing for Sylvia is she never got any right. I don't believe she did. No. But, you know, because it was making her look, I don't know, powerful.
Attention.
Yeah. Like she was a seer, and she obviously wasn't. And this lady you're talking about was probably good at these psychic things, and maybe even getting spirit messages at times. But knowing the future like that, you would need to, I don't know, either you're born with that gift or as a seer, where you see futuristic events, and there are people who can do that. And they're more localised to people's lives, you know, they're not Nostradamus. Because I don't think he was very good as a seer. If I look at him, a lot of his stuff is general and can fit. Most, you can make things fit to Nostradamus if you want. Yeah. But, you know, we had a great one in Scotland called the Bram Seer. And he was the one who predicted the end of the line of the Sutherland family because they put him to death. And he spouted this futuristic prediction as he was burning. And he actually saw the end of the lineage. And it took 200 years or whatever for it to happen, but everything he said happened.
Right.
Now, to me, I would say that in that very extreme situation, he's burning, and he's gone into this inner consciousness where he could see small events, but he's seen a timeline.
Yes.
And the timeline is that family, the Sutherlands, who right at this moment he's hating. So that kind of energy, that kind of venom would lift his mind into some kind of altered state that would maybe make him see down this timeline.
Yes.
Something like that. But the Bram seer was a good seer. He
Yes.
saw many, many futuristic events, predicted them, and they came true.
So these other ways of seeing, of knowing, have existed forever. From shamanism, Old Testament prophets, saints. But within that, there is this very specific tradition, which you are a part of, spiritualism.
I am, yeah.
And it's running through the centre of spiritualism. There's something, I know you wouldn't like the phrase, but it's almost an apostolic succession, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's handed down. And you were recognised by, you described him to me earlier today, as the most impressive medium you ever.
Oh, Albert, yeah. For me, I mean, he was a name in spiritualism. And in the book, I've used Albert because he was very credible, and I witnessed it firsthand. And he allowed himself to be tested also by Professor Roy. And that just means that the man was quite confident in his gift, but also honest enough during tests if it didn't work to say, it doesn't work. Because that's the other side. You shouldn't have to perform because somebody wants you to.
Well, has it ever happened to you, though, that you've stood up in front of 500 people and nothing's come through? What did you do?
I talked to the audience. I told them, I said, look, I'm going to be honest with you, but I get nothing. I'm just not tuning in, or something's not worked. And I've done that. And many times I've been doing a one-to-one reading. Because some days you just can't get the frequency, or it just doesn't work. But as long as you're honest. But the likes of Albert, I mean, he just had this.
More about Albert?
Yeah, well, I mean, he was an Irishman who lost his wife and 3 children during the war, and he really knew what grief was. He knew what loss was, and I think that actually gave him the incentive to want to go on and help other people who had suffered the same type of loss. But I think it also kept him honest, because he knew the pain and the importance. If you're going to do this work as a medium, you have to have integrity. And he would know what it would feel like if somebody was trying to fudge a message just to make him happy or to please him. Because he didn't like that. You couldn't give Albert a message. He wouldn't allow mediums to give him messages. He would say, no, please stop that. And he says, do you not think I can feel my own family? Of course I can. I don't need you to tell me. So you were put firmly in your place. I never did try. But to see this man who, at the end of the war, that's when Albert started to develop his gift. He had his gift. During the war, he was shot and wounded, and he was lay there with the dead, and probably would have died. And he explained it to me that he heard the voice of his grandmother shouting to him, Albert, get up, get up. And this voice resounded inside him, and he got up and he ran. And he was somewhere in North Africa, and he found kind of shelter and refuge with the family, and they helped him. And he couldn't get that out of his mind that his grandmother was standing there with him, this spirit woman, and encouraged him to get up and live on, and he did. So he had a series of events like that told him he was different.
Yes.
As mediums do, you do have that through your life. I've had the same. And with Albert, I think he brought that pain that he felt at the loss of his entire young family. I think that honestly gave him the compassion and the drive to want to take other people out of that suffering that he had gone through. And I always say, because he was a postman, Albert, that was his working, his everyday job. And I said to him, you deliver messages on so many levels, Albert. Not only do you take them, but the one thing I said was, you don't write the messages, you just deliver them.
Yes. And
it was a great way to sum him up, because he could no more have told you about his gift than fly out a window. He didn't totally understand it, as a lot of the mediums back then did not. And I think it was out of respect. They didn't want to investigate it. They wanted it just to be natural and normal.
One of the big stories in the book is the untold story of the mediums who were working during
the genuine mediums, yeah.
Second World War. Because I think it's only relatively recently that we found out the big role that the code breakers played in winning the Second World War. And one of the big stories in this book, as I say, is the role that mediums play.
Yeah. Well, again, a lot of these mediums that I've referred to and who worked during the war, there were, again, rumours. I can't testify that they happened, but rumours that they did work with different departments of the government trying to find things out. Somebody has suggested to me recently that several of them were asked to try to get visions and tune into what the Germans were doing to try and make this was it the V2 or something, this bomb, and they were getting information on when raids would happen and different things. So again, there's none of that I can use in the book because it's hearsay. But it wouldn't surprise me because the real ones, the genuine ones, honestly were sought after by the highest level of people in our country.
But they also did this tremendous work. Helping people who were grieving, who were in pain, and in that way, marvellous work for the morale of the nation.
Absolutely.
Helping people to see a higher meaning.
Well, I once said of these great ladies of the war that, there was a medal awarded to pigeons during the war for carrying messages. I said somebody should have acknowledged the messages these ladies gave and the fact that they were trying to boost morale and bring comfort and healing.
And there's some film interest.
Well, there is. I told that very story to a lady who was a film producer who'd made things like The Lord of the Rings, The Golden Compass, stuff like that. And she immediately fell in love with these women. I sent her the unedited version of the book, and she got a screenwriter immediately, so we're actually going to be producing this film called Healing the Homeland, which is coming from this book.
Fantastic.
And again, for me it'll be lovely because we're going to show that there was the real stuff, there was frauds, and we have to highlight that genuine mediums really detest the fact that people emulate them, copy them, and then use their techniques to hoodwink people. And when that happens, I mean, it does actually, if you like, it hurts you to hear that, all the work you've done, and you hear that somebody's gone and cheated. You think, well, that's a person's grief you're playing with. Better to say nothing if you don't get anything than make up nonsense. So, as I say, we want to show that for every genuine medium there is going to be somebody out there who's a charlatan. And it does lend itself to that, which is sad, because it can operate as a business where you can say, oh, I do readings for whatever, I don't know what the going rate would be for private reading today, what mediums charge, but the thing is, that can become a business, and then it can become tempting that I need money, so I have to do these readings. And I think a lot of these mediums, what they do is, I call it, they have kind of 3 readings that they can do, based on who they're reading for, and therefore you get deaths, births and marriages in a reading. Do you know someone who died? Do you know someone who's getting married? Do you know someone who's just had a baby or who wants to have a baby? All of this stuff. So it's all the general stuff, whereas the real medium, and I think mediumship was stronger during the war, and I believe that spiritualism had a purpose, and I think that to this day was the highest point of spiritualism, and as a positive force, because there's still a lot of need for mediums in the world today. And again, reminding people that when the world gets bad, mediums get better.
So that's interesting then. So if spiritualism began to flourish partly because of the American Civil War, and if it was at its height in the Second World War, why is it important now when we're not? As far as we know,
I think there's a different fear in the world today you know, everybody can be woke up by the same fear in the same moment all over the world today. If something tragically happens, this is the only time this has ever happened. We can all know within moments of something bad, and we hear this constantly on our news or through social media and stuff. This disaster's happened, that disaster's happened. There's lots of things that people are now becoming afraid of. And I think when fear increases like that, so even without a war, although there are lots of little wars going on in terrorism, and people are actually quite scared.
Yes.
And I think that the role of a medium is to try and help take away that fear of this physical life.
Yes.
The message of a medium is that your loved ones live on, you will live on. Death is not the end.
Yes.
As I say, you can't die for the life of you.
Yes. You mentioned earlier that, like Albert Best, you had an experience in childhood which set you on this road. Could you just tell me the story?
I mean, it's a story I've told so many times, but Ummy was a strange name. We don't know how he got this name. It was a friend of my mother and father's, and I was 7 when Ummy died. And the way he died in an accident, and my mother and father never informed us as kids. Ummy lived on his own. He was kind of man who just floated around from racetracks. He was a tic-tac man at the races. And we never even knew where Ummy lived. If he had a place, he just would turn up to my mum's, get fed, things like this. But he was a lovely man, and all the kids in the street loved him when he came. If he'd won at the tracks, he'd give us old pennies and things. And I had no knowledge that this man had died. And one day I was playing in the garden. I had just come through an illness. I had rheumatic fever and I was recovering. I was in the front garden, broad daylight, and I saw Ummy coming towards me from the bus terminus where he always walked from. And in that moment I felt rooted to the spot, as if I'd grown into the earth. I couldn't move. It wasn't scary, but I just felt this, wow, just there. I couldn't move towards him, but I felt almost like his love, this wonderful energy as he came towards me, and he was singing a little song. In this little song he was singing, "We will be buried in Dalbeth." And as a 7-year-old boy, I had no idea what that meant. But he was solid to me, like a real person. He wasn't glowy or spirity, he just was Ummy, and I was seeing him and smiling. And then he kind of almost glided back, I would say. He didn't, as if he just disappeared out of my sight. And at that point I felt I could run, and I ran into my mother, who was at this kitchen sink peeling potatoes. And I remember pulling at her skirts, "Mum, Ummy's here." And he's singing a happy song, and I sang the song for her. And she was furious. She actually swung round to hit me, as children got smacked in those days. And she told me, she started to shout at me. Yes. "Why are you saying this? Get out there and play," and da-da-da-da-da. My mother's reaction scared me, not the actual spiritual thing that happened. I mean, it was years later, she told me that what I said to him was so kind of profound and shocking, because they had just buried Ummy. My mum and dad, they didn't have money, but he had no money, so they had to put him in what was called a pauper's grave. We know certain like that, just there, no stone, no nothing. And my mum and dad were quite embarrassed by the fact that they buried this lovely man in a pauper's grave in this kind of section of the cemetery where just down and outs and things were buried. So that's why they didn't want to talk about it to people. Let alone I was 7, they wouldn't have shared that with me anyway. No. But it was something that I look back on now, and I think the way I saw him, he's solid like that.
So he looked to you then as solid?
Like I would be looking at you.
But it's not always like that, is it? When the departed come to you, sometimes they appear in different ways.
Yeah, it's more of a feeling.
Right.
And if I'm working and there's a crowd, I hear a lot of the messages. But it's like an inner voice, it's not always out here. Sometimes you hear a name or something, it's in here. You're almost, see the way you have inner dialogue with yourself? It's like that. I can hear the voices, and I'm just repeating them, I'm just saying it spontaneously. So, but then you maybe feel a presence. It'd be like if I was sitting here just now and had my eyes closed and you sat down, I would feel your presence here. And if I tried to describe what you look like, that's the way I would be doing it as a medium. It's almost, I've used this before, but it's like trying to describe to a person who doesn't see or feel what you do. It would be like reporting a scene to a blind person. You've got to be very descriptive.
Yes.
You can't just say there's a man here. You've got to know what that man feels like, how he died, how he lived.
Yes.
And all of that information starts to build on you as you talk. And you know, there is a whole change of the vibration around a medium when they work. Well, I know what happens to me. And that vibration, I believe, is what the spirit is. Their vibration is connecting to mine. And in that moment, I'm literally downloading, I died of a heart attack, my name's John, you know, I was 79, I see a picture all of a sudden. So you've got all sorts of things happening, and you're just trying to record everything and say it as spontaneously and as quickly as possible.
So it sometimes happens to you that someone, a departed person, appears to you in that very physical form?
No, that doesn't happen to me. That happened to me as a child.
Right.
And then once as a young adult,
Okay.
I had an apparition in my bedroom, and that's what really started me on my journey to spiritualism.
Yeah. And why, and what was happening differently on those two occasions?
For me, I can now say this, I wouldn't have known at the time. Having practiced meditation and developing mediumship, I know that your mind goes into an altered state. So when I saw Ummi, I was rooted to the ground, was the one thing I could remember. But that's because I was in an altered state of consciousness, a trance state, if you like. My eyes were open, but I was seeing in a different reality.
Right.
So therefore, it's as much as Ummi has come to me, part of me has gone out to him.
And is that what is sometimes called the light body?
Yeah.
That is what had come out.
I would refer to that,
Yeah.
Like the aura. I mean, some people see auras. I see auras. I see a light around you at the moment. And it just depends. Sometimes you see an aura very vibrant, but that is the light body, if you like, the etheric body.
Right.
In early spiritualism, they would have called it your etheric body.
Yeah.
Now, that is the part they would say would move into the spirit world.
Yes.
I would say that too. That the etheric body moves into the spirit world. But the etheric body is not round your body, it's in your body, it's through every particle, it's a light body, a lighter version of you.
Is it giving your body, it's giving your body life, it's giving it
It's a life force
structure,
energy,
maybe.
yeah. I would say that is your life force energy.
Yeah.
It's your electricity,
Yeah.
it's your power. And that light body in you and sometimes emanating from you, which I think happens if you look at people when they're extremely happy or they're in love, which is a crazy altered state of consciousness, being in love. That's when you lose all your marbles. But you're actually in a very risen state.
Yes.
You feel good. And everything about your life feels right because you're in this in-love state. So that to me would be when your light body is absolutely charged.
Yes.
Now the opposite of that would be if somebody's suffering, say, clinical depression or an illness of the body. The light, if you like, goes down. Right. So a bit like a dimmer switch.
Yes. Yes.
And that, if you look at somebody who's suffering with a depression or anything like that, you will see that everything about them is down. They compress, literally they depress, you know, they're down here. Whereas to look at somebody who's feeling love or in love, they are expanded. And it's that kind of movement of the light body that determines our attitude or our moods and different things.
So healing, practiced by you and the healers you work with, it sounds as if that involves the light body in some way. You're doing something with the light body.
I would think so. Well, again, if somebody's light has gone down, if somebody's not so bright or the light is, the charge is leaving them, then as a healer, and you know how to lift your light body through the practices you've done, you can feel this expandedness. So basically your energy is overshadowing them, and you're hoping to, if you like, jumpstart their energy. That would be a very simple way of looking at healing. I'm sure there are different types of healing that take on different things, but in one sense the healer themselves encourages the light body to function again around the person, so that they start to feel better. So, and I think a lot of people are given permission to heal themselves when a healer works with them. I mean, that's something I found, that you work with a patient and then all of a sudden You know, they feel good, but what they've felt is this faster vibration that has been missing from their life because of the thought of the illness.
And are you doing that consciously sometimes?
Yeah,
giving them the,
absolutely,
a higher vibration.
Absolutely,
yeah.
yeah.
And can people's like bodies merge, or are they always separate?
Oh yeah. I mean, again, you take falling in love, for instance, or fancying someone. I mean, there's a lot of energy you're sending out as a person. You're sending out signals, but it's in the light body. And you may, the same will work if your light body does not blend with another.
Right.
So if the aura of you and I are sitting here and we're suspicious of each other, that's never going to happen. If there's a trusting feeling between people in any situation, whether they're in a bar or in a workplace, then they blend and they get on. But a lot of this is happening in the atmosphere around us.
So our light bodies might be merging now.
Probably.
Because we're
I would assume so.
Yeah.
And also
you can't see it.
No. Oh, you can see it. Yeah. I mean, there's times you can see that. And when I say see it, as a medium, a lot of the times you'll say we can see something, and that's our fault for saying it, but we actually feel it. So you feel drawn to someone, or you're drawn in by a conversation, and that actually is you trusting.
Yes.
You know, you're actually very trusting of another person when you feel it. I mean, even as we talk, there's all these blue lights appearing, bubbling all around you at the moment, and I know they won't go on a camera because it's to do with that light body, if you like.
Yes.
And in some ways I think of it, imagine a crystal, a cup crystal in the window. So it's just a cup crystal, but the moment the light hits it, there's going to be hues and colours and all sorts of things happening. And I see that in the aura sometimes. Like you see, like there, I'm seeing these little flashes of kind of ultraviolet, kind of boom, boom, boom. And I think it's almost like that the aura is in some ways like a prism, that it refracts feeling rather than light. So good feelings can cause the aura to have flashes of purple or gold or something like that.
Yes.
And these kind of things do happen.
And how physically close do people have to be for this touching or merging to take place?
As limited as people can have it, there are times. I mean, there's been people through history, say like Padre Pio, who, the wonderful monk who would astrally project out of his body. Now he's not leaving his body; he's connected to his body, but the light body travels. So therefore, distance has no bearing on it if you don't limit yourself. So that kind of thing, you could be in another country and actually still affect somebody if you know how to do that. And if you know, like a lot of I suppose the Tibetan monks and things, or lamas, they are trained to project out of their body. And in Tibet many years ago, telepathy was a big thing. The telephone has killed it because telepathy, they had to over great distance. They would send messages to each other. They called it public non-reality, when somebody who wasn't there would appear in a room. You know, like a phantom, but they were actually felt by the people who were there.
Some people say that the light body emerges partially from the physical body during sleep. Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, I've had experiences of that, and I mean, anyway, your brain is doing what it's doing during sleep, and it's obviously fixing all the systems in the body and stuff like that, and so therefore you go through patterns of sleep. And I think that's like levels of altered states of consciousness. You'll have semi-conscious or hypnagogic states where you dream, and where your dreams have, you know, maybe a message for you. Your subconscious is answering questions that you've been pondering in the daytime, or sometimes it's just a rubbish dream. It's just bits and bobs of a day that made no sense to you. And memories can get tagged onto that, and this is what makes people think that dreams have this special kind of supernatural quality at times. And sometimes it is because you are out of your body that you may feel the presence of a spirit.
Because the spirit is, your spirit is out of your body, so another spirit can communicate more easily.
Well, if we look at it this way, Mark, that as a medium, for me to work as a medium, that there's an expansion around me. Even as a little boy, I used to feel a vibration, and I didn't know what that was, and I would feel palpitations and things. And now I learn it's not my physical heart, because I've actually done part of the scientific tests in the university where they monitored my body functions as I was going into an altered state. So my heart would slow down, and yet I would feel this, like my heart was pounding, but on the monitor, my heart would actually drop to 1/3 of the normal heart rate. My brain would go into sleep state, and yet I was conscious, totally conscious, because I've trained myself to do that. And so in that sense, that's what's happening. I'm out in that light body as I'm working as a medium. Now, for instance, if your father in the spirit world wanted to communicate with me, I might feel him touch me. He won't be touching the physical body, but it will feel like that because his light body and my light body are now in a reality where they are solid to each other. And that's where I would say, oh, you know what, your father's standing here, he's telling me la-di-da. Because that's the access point. I am giving them the access to use me to deliver a message to you. That's exactly how it would happen.
And is that sensational? I think we all sometimes have in dreaming of, when we're asleep, of suddenly feeling as if we're falling forward. Is that connected with the...
Yeah, because I mean, when we're doing development for altered states of consciousness, you do go through some of these episodes where you think you're falling through the chair or the floor, if you, depending on where you're meditating. And again, it is that sense of separation. And that's what makes death so scary to people, because they think, what's going to happen? And the old near-death experience phenomena of flying through a tunnel. Well, to me, it's nothing to do with movement of a tunnel. It's to do with quickening of a vibration. But your brain is still connected at that point and has to come up with a logical explanation for this movement. So that, and because it's going faster, 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 it resembles moving through a tunnel of light. But what's really happening there is you are going into your light body at a fast rate, and if you're not used to that, that will feel scary. That's the drop sensation. Well, you know, you're on the roller coaster. Whoa. But,
so what's happening when you're asleep then?
Well, I think when you go to sleep and you're out of body, it's a natural thing that your brain has gone so low that you don't feel the separation of the light body.
Right. But so is the feeling of falling and coming back into the body, or what?
I think the feeling of falling is that you have awareness, or conscious awareness.
You suddenly realise you're
that you're out.
Right.
And that's scary to people. Yes. I mean, when I was younger, I used to work with Tricia Robertson and Professor Roy. We would go to where people believed they were haunted. And the most popular thing was teenagers who felt that their bed was shaking. Well, of course, they were feeling that vibration. Beds don't shake. No. They really don't, you know, not even in the Enfield Poltergeist or The Exorcist. A lot of that is just fantasy and drama. But the kid feels this experience. So their brain says, the bed's shaking, it has to come up with something. And the more, when I was able to talk to them and say, no, I want, you know, we can get this tested to show you that you, first of all, it's not your heart rate, you're not going through a period of anxiety, it's actually this light body.
Yes. And
when we got to know it, it's as if the brain accepted it and then it didn't happen anymore. Because there was an explanation that the brain could now fathom. Because without having knowledge like that and you experience a kind of paranormal thing, then you're going to think the worst. Your mind goes to a scary place. So even though it's not anything sinister, the first thing you do is unknown to you, therefore it's danger.
Yes.
And that's why a lot of people do that.
So you know your way around your light body and you know how to work on it. Actually, what you were saying earlier about healing the light body reminded me of something which traditionally happened in ancient Egypt, where the Hierophants would raise the light body out of somebody lying in a tomb, and then they would work on the light body before allowing it to sink back down into the body.
Well, actually, there's some healers who practice, and that's what they would be doing. So to watch them, you maybe see them as if they were doing an operation on empty space, but the person may actually feel the effects in the physical body. Yes. But you know, some of the healers have done that. But once again, I must point out there's a lot of these healers who do psychic surgery and use pig's blood and they do all this stuff, so you've got to be careful with that.
Could you name a genuine one who does this, working on the light?
Well, I mean, one of the ones I witnessed working was a lady called Charo Alvarez in southern Spain, and she was incredible. But she would go into an altered state of consciousness and she would channel this entity called Maria del Mar. And whilst Maria was through, she was doing some kind of stuff, and with a hand, and it literally was trying to cure the person or do the healing on the person, on the light body. And Charo, I mean, she was curing a lot of people. It wasn't just a suggestive healing thing. People were going with serious illness and getting better.
Yes.
Now, I'm sure she had a very high success rate. I'm sure not everybody can get healed. That can happen. You know, some people, there's a time for healing. But Charo was a great... I witnessed it with a little boy who was blind, and I carried the boy in to her office, and that boy saw after that. That was incredible. And when you tell somebody that, they think, what? Because logically that cannot happen, but it did happen. And Ben lived for another 2 years. She did tell his mother that she could give him an extension to his life. But that wee boy was blind, and he was a dead weight. He had lost the use of his legs, he had brain tumours all over his head. And after the healing of Charo, he was running. And he went, and she told him he would go back to school, he would play football. At a point though, she says, the healing will stop. And the boy died 2 years later. But the boy had a 2-year extension and a quality of life. One occasion, and I have mentioned it in the book, where the lady in my street died and her 2 children came to fetch me. I was known as this, strange guy who talks to the dead. And the lady had just died. In fact, it was her funeral the day before. And her 2 little kids came to fetch me, and I went over, and there was phenomena in the house like I've never seen before, where the carpets we stood on lifted, and the rapping sounds all around the wall, just like the Fox sisters. It was real. So much so that the neighbour from downstairs had come to the door and asked what the hell's going on.
Yes.
And he was standing in the living room experiencing this with us. The 2 kids were laughing.
Yes.
And all I can tell you, the feeling of love in that room was incredible. It wasn't scary. This is what I mean. If you're not afraid of this stuff, none of that stuff will scare you. Yes. It certainly didn't scare me. But to see this, and I said to them, why wouldn't a mother want to reveal to her kids that she was still there? Why wouldn't she, if she could? And I ended up being able to give the message to the father about why she had come and why she was doing what she was doing. And the phenomenon stopped like that. But the message got across.
So in addition to the physical phenomenon, objects moving around through space, you were given messages. Did you also see energies? Could you understand?
Absolutely not. That was an individual case that's never happened again in my life. It's the one case of an actual phenomena happening physically around me, and I have no explanation other than it was the power of the woman's love.
Yes.
Because the joy in the room. But it was just a force, and that's what I mean. A lot of times with mediumship, it gets overlooked because of the technicalities and the science and what causes this force, that force, the next force. But it's actually love, and it's that connectedness. So, I mean, for these little kids, I've always said when it's ever a mother who comes through, I spoke to a dear friend of mine, Dronna, and she put it beautifully last night. We were talking about a mother who has just died, and her daughter's in her 70s. And Dronna said, yeah, it doesn't matter what age a mother dies at. She said, because it's the most profound loss we will ever have, because that was the first heartbeat you ever heard. And I thought that was so beautiful.
That's beautiful.
But that's the kind of thing, it's that love for somebody so much that does break barriers, it fractures the ether, I would say, and can do, because this overwhelming feeling of love, which is your light body at its most expanded, can actually do miracles that we would think. That spiritual reality is kept away from us by our logic and our doubt and all these things. Yes. But when you break through your own doubt and your own reckonings of, that means reality's here, there, la-di-da. When you go beyond that and realise that there are other realities, and they're there all the time, then you actually can feel that. I mean, at the amount of times I am so lucky to feel love as often as I do, reporting it from one side to the other. And that is the big part of my work as a medium, is to try and animate that spirit, to bring them back to life for a moment so that these people can have that last conversation. Yes. Or, well, not necessarily the last, but in that context. And the healing that gets done in that moment, you can't put a price on that.
No.
You don't know to do anything with it other than what you do, which is bring the two worlds together for a moment. It's actually quite magic.
Yes. And I suppose that leads naturally on to D.D. Hume, who I think is, I suspect, maybe your favourite from the way you've written up your favourite.
I like Hume because his character's a nice character too, and I always think that people are decent people, and he seemed to be a decent man. I mean, there was an episode in his life where he was coerced into marrying this older woman and things, and some of the skeptics will use this against him. Right. It's nothing to do with his mediumship. Hume himself talks about it in his book and says, you know, this was something he was literally conned into doing. Yes. And they were saying, no, he did it to get her money and all this stuff. But his mediumship stood the test of everything. And
he was never caught cheating.
No.
And why do you admire him so much? Why was he such a fantastic exemplar of mediumship, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, in the book I've actually shown that Hume, to me, was the prototype of mediumship that was to follow, because he had episodes of levitation. He had this table tilting was the big thing in spiritualism back in the day, but it defied physics, and this is what William Crookes had to witness. All these glasses, everything on this table could lift up like that and they will not move. Now, what the spirit are trying to show us there, and show a physicist, that there's another law in the universe that we don't know.
Yes.
And it's this kind of beyond our reckoning. So Hume, to me, had every gift. He had direct voice mediumship, where voices would appear around him. He had parts of materializations, people's body parts would start to materialise in ectoplasm, and he gave healing. He was a wonderful healer. And I think he was just a compassionate man.
And he was most famous, I suppose, for levitation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is the old tale that he floated out of a window in Kensington and floated back in the other.
Yes.
I mean, there was amazing things that he could put his body into hot coals and things, they would never be burned. So again, the spirit was showing something here to do with the science behind it, this kind of anti-physics, if you want to call it. I don't know what you would call it, but it's the opposite law of physics.
So is levitation to do with the light body?
Again, yeah.
Behaving in some way?
I mean, if I had a more scientific mind, I'm sure I could describe it better, but there are episodes of I'm in a trance. Okay, I'm not levitating off the ground, but my whole body becomes light. So, for instance, if my hand were like that for an hour of trance, I won't feel a thing. Whereas if you try and stand with your arms up like this, it's going to hurt your shoulders, it's going to hurt your neck, but I will feel nothing, because it's as if the light that's in my body has actually changed, I don't know, the structure or whatever around me.
So you think you are actually lighter?
You are much lighter, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there was a great doctor in Glasgow years ago, Dr. John Winning, and he did tests with the mediums and the spirits when they would materialise. That he would ask permission to take a cutting of the ectoplasm and have it analysed. But he also did things like he would have the mediums weighed while they were working, and they would lose weight whilst working. Now that's an interesting thing. How does that happen? How do you lose weight for an hour and then put it back on?
But if you were in this lightened state and I reached out to touch you, what would happen then?
I think it depends on I mean, in the old days they would say that would be dangerous to the medium. And in some cases they say it was. Helen Duncan did have burns on her body after being raided. But I mean, for me, no, I don't think that would affect me at all. Quite often if I'm in a trance state, then the spirit will invite people to come over and they'll give them a message directly from someone. Yes. And often they'll take the person's hand. So, but there are times when the people go to reach for my hand, they feel that their hand has disappeared.
Yes.
It hasn't physically, but they feel a sensation of lightness.
Yes.
It's like, oh, what is that? Because they're not used to that. Whereas to me, that's quite a normal state to be in.
Yeah. What about ectoplasm? Because I think if you go on the internet, you look at ectoplasm, the first thing you see are photographs by a man called Hamilton, And a lot of those really look like fakes.
Oh, they're absolutely fakes. And it's one of the things I don't like when people write books about spiritualism and they show these silly old photographs of women with bed sheets round their head appearing out of cupboards saying, oh, look, I'm a spirit coming back. And a lot of people did that. Again, the spirit cabinet, it was called, and the medium would be put in the cabinet. The thinking behind it, or the philosophy behind that, was that ectoplasm could only form in complete darkness. That daylight would actually not allow ectoplasm to be formed. So the ectoplasm is the light body of the person. It's the life force energy that's being pulled. If ectoplasm is real, that's what it is. And then the spirit, remember, it was actually called teleplasm before ectoplasm. This is the earlier term. And teleplasm was something that as it came out here, it would be a telepathy from the spirit that would remind itself what it looked like. And they would remould themselves in their image in the medium's ectoplasm. Right. So it was like a whole telepathic thing, that really, but it's like telepathy in a physical form. The telepathy can be real, like it can be where you've got psychics in the past who could move objects with their mind. So that the mind has a lot more kind of qualities than we know. And I think through early spiritualism there was a lot of experimentation with that. D.D. Hume being the protocol, that they tried everything. Yes. And I think because he was open. That's the thing. He didn't close his mind. He also didn't become a spiritualist. He didn't believe in it. He didn't want to be part of spiritualism. He was an individual medium. And I'm kind of like that today, that as much as I work for spiritualist churches and things like that, but I've never really conformed to the spiritualist religion. I'm a medium. And I think mediums have been around a heck of a lot longer than spiritualism. You know, Joan of Arc was a medium. She had to be to hear voices. You know, and so on. A lot of the prophets in the Bible and things, if they did what they did, it was feats of mediumship.
I think it's in the book that a famous scientist, maybe Crookes, was there and investigated ectoplasm, maybe in connection with Hume, but scientists did look at it.
Yes, they did,
and they didn't universally dismiss it.
No, they didn't.
And Albert Best, I think, had an experience with ectoplasm.
One which Albert had an experience once with ectoplasm, and he says that he never wanted it again. And it was nothing to do with a séance. He'd come home from his work as postman. He had a sleep on his chair. And as he was waking up, he could feel this substance coming out of his mouth, and it choked him. And he hated it, and he said, you know, basically to the spirit world, never ever do that to me again, that's disgusting. He hated it. But he was coming out of a sleep, and he could feel this. And he says it was just really like a horrible substance, and he felt bad for a day after that.